Today's episode is a little bit different than my typical episodes because my business, Espresso Podcast Production, is 5 years old today. Oh my gosh. And I want to have this episode to talk about the evolution I've had in entrepreneurship, podcasting, and what I see for the future. I am just so excited to have made it to 5 years. Honestly, if you don't know my business story, I never really intended on having a business. I started a podcast in college with my friend, Lo. Our podcast was called Wrestling Winedown. And what we did was we talked about wrestling. We were both journalism students. We had a love for WWE. And so we decided to use the podcast studios that we had access to at UNLV and just start podcasting. Never did I think it would take me anywhere into the world of entrepreneurship, but life has a funny way of working out like that. So what ended up happening was it was the pandemic. I had just graduated college and I moved to Seattle. I was working at UFC at the time. I was laid off. I really didn't have anything going on, and that wasn't my post-grad dream per se. So one of my friends, Carlin, she somehow convinced me to move up to Seattle and be her roommate. A few months into living here, I had someone I knew in Vegas, my cousin's cousin, reach out to me. And she's a personal branding coach. Her name is Ashley Maslow. I'll put her link in the show notes. She has a podcast and she didn't have the time to manage it and knew that I had this podcast in college, and she knew me because we are related in a distant way. And she just asked if I would be open to running her podcast for her, doing the editing. And at the time I was unemployed. So I was like, yeah, and honestly, I would love to. I would love to. So Ashley was my first introduction into working with clients, and my business wouldn't be where it is without her taking a chance on me and introducing me to more people in the online space. So Ashley, if you're listening, thank you so much. Really, all of what I do is rooted from you taking a chance on me. So I worked with her and she was like, hey, Haley, like, you can build a business from this. And this is what she actually helped people with. And so it was just perfect. She got me referrals. And then I started treating my business like a business about a few months in. I hired a mindset coach, Kiera Patrick, who, again, I don't think my business would be where it's at without her. I'm also going to put her link in the show notes. And just the combination of growing my business and having mindset support was game changing. For anyone who's out there that is struggling, I highly encourage you to invest in a mindset coach. Like, it is truly game changing. So when I first started, I was doing part podcast production and part virtual assistant work. I was doing virtual assistant work for I think like a year and a half and decided that that wasn't necessarily for me, but it did bring me great connections and it was a moneymaker, honestly. I just wasn't passionate about it and decided to switch fully into podcast editing, production, marketing, all that. And as I did that, like, yes, it was scary to let go of my virtual assistant clients, but it also opened up the opportunity for so many more connections and so many more aligned businesses to work with. And I'm just really grateful I took that leap, because without that, I don't think I would still be here 5 years later. I think one of my biggest takeaways from 5 years in business is how your community is everything to you. Literally everything. When I started, I didn't know anyone in business. No one. I knew Ashley and that was it. So I knew one person. I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I had just moved to a new city where I only knew 2 people. So it was really like starting fresh. But now, like, I have so many people around me who are here to support me and help me grow. And I'm here to, we give each other referrals. And that wouldn't have been done unless I actually put myself out there in business. So I think that's like one big takeaway is truly who you know makes a difference in business. I know that I've seen a lot of people online recently saying like, I don't chase, I attract, I don't go networking, I wait for people to come to me. I think that's BS. If you have a business online or in person, you need to get out there and show people who you are and build those connections, because I would not be here 5 years later without the connections that I have built and just the networks, the people, the support. Entrepreneurship is hard, and it'd be even harder if I didn't have any connections, honestly. So get out there and network. And one way to network is through podcasting. So I've told the story before on the podcast of why I started Employee to Boss, which is my first podcast I started. I didn't know anyone, and I wanted to be able to connect with more business owners. I wanted to be able to invite people onto my show and get to know them. And that's why I started podcasting. If I didn't make a single dollar from that podcast, I would have been happy, because I was interviewing at least 4 people a month, usually more. And those are 4 more people that I get to know. They get to know me, and then we get to, either do business together or just have each other in our networks. So having done over 200 interviews in the past few years, that has been a game changer in business. That's why I love podcasting, is because you don't have to be making millions of dollars to have $1 million business with podcasting, right? Your connections that you're making are more important than a sponsorship, more important than anything else, because your connections of the people you're interviewing introduce you to a network of their audience. So really, through having one conversation with a business owner or whoever you're interviewing, they will then share that episode, and then you will get in front of their audience too. So name a better way to be introduced to a whole bunch of new people. Podcasting is the way to go. And I think that's just, that's my biggest takeaway from the past 5 years is community. Of course, I have worked with a ton of cool clients. I'm actually sharing a post about all the clients I've worked with. Not all of them, but the big majority of them, and just how it's been. Business is so fun when you keep yourself open to all these opportunities and all these people, because never did I think I would work with someone who talks about wine, someone who talks about dogs, someone who talks about wedding dresses, wellness. All these are different podcast topics that I focus on, and I absolutely love having a variety of clients. Another takeaway that I want to share from my 5 years in business, which is just so crazy to even say, is how important it is to be investing back into your business and into yourself. I have worked with multiple different coaches, everything from sales to marketing to mindset to relationship building. All of these different coaches have helped me get to where I am. And like I said, Kira Patrick was my first coach I ever hired for mindset. And then since then, I've worked with a lead gen coach. I've worked with a coach who I absolutely love her. I interviewed her on Podcast Cafe. Her name is Kate Perkovic. She's Toronto based and truly just a game changer in my business. She is so smart when it comes to marketing and sales. And she's just an amazing business owner who I have learned so much from over the past year that I've worked with her, game changing for my business. So investing in yourself is so important. I've also worked with Karina Baldwin, who is a mental performance coach. Amazing. I'm actually going to one of her retreats in Spain this year. I'll share all about that. It's the end of September, so excited for that. And Kelly Adams. I have to give a shout out to Kelly Adams, who is a mindset coach. Amazing at what she does. She is great with business strategy, and she is also great with noticing when I'm having limiting beliefs or any mindset issues, and really giving me, she calls them love nudges, but really it's getting me in check of you need to stop doing that because that's not supportive for who you want to be. amazing, amazing women that I've worked with. So when I thought about starting a business or realized what I was doing was starting a business, I really never thought that it would get me to where I am now. I have worked full-time in my business since I started, and since then, I've went on to starting obviously my own podcast, which you're listening to. I have Employee to Boss, which is top 3% globally. I have Podcast Cafe, which is top 10% globally of all podcasts. I've worked with dream clients, and I've had a life through all of this somehow. Of course, that hasn't been always easy, but work-life balance is so important to me. And if you knew me before I started my business, you would know how shy I was when I was younger. So the fact that my podcasts are ranking top 10% globally and top 3% of all podcasts is actually, if I told my younger self this, I think there's no way that I would believe this. Like, no way at all. It is just owning a business and entrepreneurship has been like the most self-development push that I have ever had in my whole life. I don't think anything changes you the way that owning a business does for the better. It's made me better at communicating, putting myself out there. It's made me better with money management, time management, relationship building. Like, owning a business has changed my life, as cliche as that sounds. Like, if you have a desire to be an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is not for everyone, will be the first to admit that. Like, this is a lot of stress that I put myself under, and I know all of my fellow business owners, like, we all put ourselves under so much stress. It's not always for everyone, but I cannot imagine doing anything other than what I'm doing now, owning a business, working for myself, working with these amazing clients who are then going off to change their industry, shatter thoughts, build up women. Like, these are the things that I fully love doing. And I don't think I would have ever thought of myself as an entrepreneur until I was pushing myself to become one. And I think it's really surprising that, like, I had this in me all along, even when I was a shy teenager. Like, the fact that people are listening to me talk weekly and coming to me for advice on how to grow their podcast, I would have never thought this in a million years. I want to share a few more things before I wrap up this episode. Just a celebration episode is when I was announcing to my clients or people in my network that my business was turning 5 years old. I'm having a party for it, which I'll share all about on social media. But I was getting two really common responses. Number one was, okay, good for you for celebrating the milestones. And like, we all need to celebrate more. We have tiny things in our business that we can celebrate every day. I've never had a party for my business, but when I realized I'm turning 5, I was like, I want to have a party. I want to have like a celebration. I mean, I had a dog birthday party. I've had a dog breed reveal party for when I got captain a DNA test. If I could celebrate that, I can absolutely celebrate 5 years in business. And that's my challenge to you. Like, I want you to celebrate. It doesn't always have to be a party like what I'm doing, but it could be a nice dinner, buying yourself a piece of jewelry. It could be taking yourself on a trip. It could be, I don't know, posting on social media about your wins, sharing it with your network. Like, celebrate more. And I think when people were telling me, like, good for you for celebrating, that was kind of what was coming up of like, why don't we all celebrate more? Like, we all are crushing it in business or reaching new milestones or pushing ourselves in different ways. Like, why don't we share more about it? So you should absolutely be sharing more about your wins in business. The second response I was getting was people were saying, your business is still so young. I can't wait to see what you accomplish. So I'm 28 and I've had my business for 5 years. And at first I was like, what do you mean it's so young? Like, most businesses don't make it to 5 years. Like, what are you talking about? And I was talking to someone who told me this. It was multiple people who told me this, by the way. But this one lady, I was like, what do you mean by that? And she was like, 5 years? Like, yes, that's a long time, but it's not that long, honestly. Like, you are 28. That means you've had your business for about 20% of your life, or like 17% of your life. So she's like, it seems long to you, but in like the grand scheme of business or life, it's really not that old. Something about that made me feel very existential of like, oh my God, like I could have a business for 50 years. I could have a business for 40 years. Like, it made me feel excited for the future and also existential, but mostly excited because if this is what's been done in 5 years, like what's going to be done in 10, 15, 20? Will I still have, what will the future of podcasting be in 20 years? How will I shift as a business owner as I go through different phases of life? I think it's pretty exciting. Okay, well, anyway, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I just could not pass up the opportunity to celebrate a little bit more. Thank all of you listeners for coming and listening to the podcasts weekly, Employee to Boss and Podcast Cafe. I'm so grateful for my clients that I've worked with. I'm so grateful for the networking groups I'm a part of, my online community, my podcast guests, the stories that I'm bringing to you guys every single week through these guest episodes. And also just, I want to thank my friends and my family for being there for me in those times where I'm like, why the fuck am I a business owner? Like, this is stupid. And then the next day I'm like, oh, actually I would rather be doing nothing else, and just hanging in there for the ride. If you're a business owner, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you're like ripping your hair out one day. Maybe you have a nightmare client or just like a nightmare situation. And you're like, people in 9-to-5s don't deal with this. That's what I'm going to go do. And then the next day you're like, la, 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 I love my business. I do that all the time. Thankfully, I've only worked with 2 nightmare clients in my 5 years of business. It's a story for another day, but I feel like that's a pretty good stat. So 2 in 5 years, I'll take it. I also want to end this episode by saying I want to thank all of you podcasters who are out here brave enough to share your story and your voice, because this is not easy to put ourselves out there, to put our thoughts out there, to get on video and post on social media. I mean, luckily I haven't had too many people like give me hate comments online, but it has happened. And I think it's brave of all of us to be able to show up and share our voice and stand up for what we care about. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I just want to thank you for being brave in a world that wants us to blend in. With that, here's to 5 years. It's only noon, so I don't have a champagne yet, but I have my coffee, of course. So here's to 5 years, and I can't wait to see what is in the future.